All right. Very good. Okay. Well, thanks, everybody. My hope is that we're going to fly fairly quickly. I'm curious how many of you already use MissionInsite in your place, so there's some familiarity. Who among you are brand new and have never seen this thing before? Because that would be helpful for me to know. All right. There's one or two of you. So, all right. So, one of the things that I will tell you is it's a real pleasure, first of all, to be here. It's a great conference, and to actually be in a space that has internet. When you have a web-based software tool and there is no web, you got a little problem. So I got about 100 slides here. We'll kind of move in and out of slides and try and go live as well. So the first thing I want to say to the group is, one of the challenges we have with information demographics, regardless of the company and the provider, is that everybody thinks if they get their demographic report, whatever that report is, it tells the story of their area. And there is no single report from any vendor, no matter how good they are, that tells the story of the mission area. It takes multiple views to do that work, because one neighborhood's different from another. Clearly, one congregation is very different from another. If you're in an urban center, you know that you can go a few blocks and see a very different place. Even in rural churches, in rural areas, they are very different in competency. And so that's part of the multi-view approach. And gentlemen, welcome. We're glad you're here. Everybody's introduced themselves, and so I'm going to have you introduce yourselves as well. Would you mind telling us where you're from, you're a pastor, layperson, what conference, all that good stuff?
I'm George Reynolds. I'm the pastor at Lincolnstown Life Rockville Extended here in the Susquehanna Conference, and I'm about 10 minutes away from
Cool. Sir.
I'm John Poning. I'm from the Oklahoma Conference, and I pastor Cornerstone United Methodist
Excellent.
Church.
Good. We've got conferences all over the country represented here. That is really cool. So multiple views are important, and the first view that we think is essential is understanding the unique identity of a congregation. The reality is, you all know this, churches don't approach things the same way. They have different capacities, both in energy and lifestyle and finances. So we call this core view because it's actually the ability to upload people. And I will tell you just a quick story. About 4 or 5 years ago, MissionInsite began talking about the need to upload people so that you could view people on the map and think strategically. There was a lot of pushback 5 years ago. What are you going to do with our names, and is it confidential and all that sort of thing? We went from 0 to 5 million. So now there is a sense across the connection and other denominations, we work with 20 denominations, that this is kind of a starting point for most congregations. In some annual conferences, they have 130, 140, 150,000 people plotted. If you do that, and you do that in a district with your churches, you have a picture of the United Methodists and who Methodists are in general as against the communities that they're serving. So that's part of the reality behind that. Community view is the ability then so we're really answering the question, who are we? Community view asks the question, who is our neighbor? It is not census data, it is that as a base. It's a number of other data sources. We'll talk about them. But here is the key. When you ask the question, who are we? And you ask the question, who is my neighbor or our neighbor? And you fuse what you learn. Then we move to that third view, which is called fusion view. And most often people think about that view with the comparative insight report, which is one of our predefined reports that really measures the difference between a community and a congregation, or the similarities between a community and a congregation. So it really is about listening to the unique reality of a church. It is learning about the community, and it is being leaders in the midst of all that. And here's the thing. How many times have you heard, I've done my demographics? And the translation of that is, I did my 5-mile radius, or better yet, I did my 10-mile radius. And if I really want to know a lot, I do my 20-mile radius, and those are completely useless. The larger you go, the less you learn, period. Now in rural areas, obviously you've got to go larger. We understand that. But looking at multiple ways look at the environment multiple ways is important. The other thing you hear is, I did my demographics because my superintendent asked me to do that. It's 2 years old. Is it still good? No. No, because we have multiple updates a year. People move all over the place. 8 million people move every year. There's diversity, unbelievable, even in rural areas, and you can't know all of that. And it's an ongoing process. You don't love people at 2 years and then love them again in 2 more years, and it's something that you do repeatedly, and it's kind of a cycle. So there are multiple questions you can answer. So we think that the characteristics of people that use information and are innovative missionally are they believe this is an asset. So this is not something you do to fill out a report. This is an asset to understanding who is my neighbor. How can you engage your neighbor if you don't know who they are? Now, obviously, you got to have your feet on the ground. You need to go visit. You need to do all the things we do, but you can't know it all without some additional assistance. And that using information produces greater missional results more quickly. So the interesting thing is if you ask churches, what is your future? What do you believe your future to be? Probably 6 or 7 out of 10 are going to say families and young children. Yes? What if they don't live there? What if in your community people look like me? What if in your community there's racial ethnic diversity? What if in your community you have high numbers of singles? What if in your community it is single parents? That's part of the reality of the world today. So if you don't know these things, you cannot get the results you're really being called to do. And then finally, and I think this is the key, and for some reason I'm having a little trouble, that your budget and your leadership are focused on what you learn. If you look at your environment, you find there are lots of single parents, and you don't have any capacity to engage single parents. Welcome, come on in. Then you've got to staff for that, and you have to budget for that. Make sense to everybody? So, I may need a battery. Let's talk about information. This is not exciting, but it is important to understand because maybe it's not true in your churches, but when I was on the conference staff, one of the things I often heard is, well, this information, I don't believe any of this. I've lived here 25 years, and no. Well, I know where we get our information. And so it's important to know where you get yours and where. So part of it is understanding what's unique about what's here in the system. And the first source is called Synergos. And Synergos is one of 3 or 4 companies that take the census data, which is clearly too old now, and do a current year estimate, a 5-year projection, and a 10-year forecasting of the general population, household trends, income, that kind of thing. So they do something, they all do a pretty good job, frankly. We've used them all. Here's what Synergos does that's really unique and I think tremendous. They track the changes in zip 4s. Zip 4s are the last 4 digits on your zip code, and they represent 3 to 10 households, generally speaking. In an urban center, they might be an apartment building. I mean, the zip 4 could be one building. Why does that matter? If the Postal Service adds a zip 4, there's something going on. And they actually track changes in zip 4s and mail delivery. They confirm it. And they do this monthly. We don't know of anybody that does anything like that. And so what that means is they feed information quarterly to all of us that use their data, and we update our core engine twice a year, fall and winter, spring and summer. So you've got every 6 months or so, you've got changes of all the numbers, the basic numbers in whatever report you generate. Make sense? And then you may have heard of Experian. They're one of the major credit companies in America. What you may not know is they know a lot more about you than you'd like them to know. 300 data points. 300 data points they collect on households. Wow. And we'll talk a little bit about that. What do they do with that? They create a clustering model called Mosaic. Household types. 71 of them. Let me tell you how much diversity there really is going on in America. In 2000, there were 40 different household types. In the 2010 census, it went to 71. Think about that. Think about what it means to take household types and go from 40 to 71 in a decade. That is huge, huge. So it is lifestyle, it's attitude, it's age, it's income, it's a portrait of households. And that's what they do with all of this. And finally, or there's two more, we do a national religious survey every 4 years called Quadrennium. Terrible name. We realized that after we named it Quadrennium, especially for Methodists. We think we're tied to that. But these are the Ministry Insight and the Religious Insight reports on our system. They talk about American religious beliefs, preferences, and practices. More than 100,000 samples in the survey, distributed across the country. I'm not going to take a lot of time to explain how we do it. There's a white paper on the help menu. You can read it. But what we did is take the 100,000 plus, I think 115, and we distributed them. Obviously, you can't go door to door in every community. We distributed them based upon two filters. The first is census region. People in the Northeast respond differently than people in the South do. People in the West. Filter number one. Filter number two, the presence of mosaic groups. There are 19 mosaic groups in America, and so the groups in the neighborhood by your church and the census region influence how the projections of the survey results work. 80 to 95% confidence level. Let me say it again, 80 to 95% confidence level. Margin of error, 2 to 3.5%. So, are these reports like program preferences, faith involvement, are they stone tablets? No. Are they really directionally sound? Yes, they are. Unless you live in Amana, Iowa. You know about Amana, Iowa? Okay, no, you're from Iowa. Those are the Amish people. All right, what about Salt Lake City? Does that resonate with you? If you live in Salt Lake City, what does that mean? Yeah. So surveys don't work very well there. I mean, no survey can do that kind of anomalous thing. That's about 95% not a problem, but for those 5% places where you've got strange things going on, yeah, no survey works quite that well there. Finally, we have, my goodness, we have a source called Epsilon. They track consumer behavior. That's what provides, and this gets a little creepy, rooftop information on every house in America, about 95%. And so that powers our address list and Neighbor Center. If your conference licenses Neighbor Center, you literally can look at every house on a street and see what's going on with people and their age and their name. And it's really kind of neat. And then, so here's what happens. When I went to a national developers meeting, we launched a Neighbor Center about 3 years ago or so. All the developers, all the Methodist developers in the room, I'm talking about Neighbor Center. I'm showing them Neighbor Center, and everybody went, wow, oh, wow. And then the next response was, oh, I don't know about that. You know, every single part of this is not confidential information. This is public domain. You can't get it without having the kind of resources to get to these things and licensing them. But there's nothing here that people can't find out, unfortunately. So if you don't think companies like Amazon know this stuff, guarantee you they do. So we're going to talk about the new user interface that is designed for people who don't have any familiarity with how to use the tools. So I want you to see, this is what you're going to see when you log in the first time. Many of you have already seen it. And it asks, what would you like to do? And so I think it's important to start with what we think is primary, and that's plotting people. There are two kind of plots, two templates you can use for plotting. These are Excel files for those of you that don't know how to do the upload. We'll look at that in a minute. There's a default template that 98% of our churches use. And then there's a custom template for those churches that have got people who are techie and they want to do a custom plot for their school. Or they want to do a custom plot for some kind of nonprofit that they're doing, and they want to have something that they can track that. You can do your own custom things if you want. Some churches, the little church I'm in, did a plot for their donors in 2018 because they wanted to know who were the donors and where do they live. There's all kinds of things you can do. And so we use those plots to generate the Comparative Insight Report, which is our best analytical tool. So we're going to click on People Plot. The next step is to upload people. If you are not a church administrator, you cannot upload people. Why? because you don't want everybody and their cousin being able to retrieve and mess around with church data, right? So it's the pastor, it's designated by the agency administrator, or if they call us, we will turn it on with permission of the conference. So these are the very restricted access to do this upload and retrieval. So it'll be grayed out. When you do that, you get to a window that says congregants, default, and add a new people type. 90% of the folks use the default template, and really that's all you need to put in the template. First name, last name, street address 101 Main Street, address 2 would be suite 12 or apartment 14, city, state, and zip code. It's important to put the names in. Why? Because the tool then allows you, if you're the pastor or your mission planner, to draw a shape around dots on the map and retrieve the data, small groups and different opportunities by using that kind of information. So the new people type, I'm just going to, I mentioned it, I'm not going to talk about it anymore. So,
hang on a second.
Yep.
I'm sorry, you lost me. So you're suggesting we put our congregants in there so
Yes.
that we can
I'm going to show you.
know their profile?
I'm going to show you. Yes, that's exactly what I'm strongly suggesting that.
Very strong.
I'm very strongly suggesting that. And I need to prove to you why. Obviously, you need to know why. So I thought the best way to do this was to show you a real live church, a real live kind of example of how this works. And the interesting thing about this is a North Carolina conference, and this is a church in Durham. And the interesting thing is I did this work for Duke, a class with their MDiv students. And then I did a workshop for the district in Raleigh. And ironically, the pastor and staff from this church showed up at the workshop. And so I'm going around greeting people, and the pastor said, and I said, where are you from? He said, Aldersgate. Aldersgate? Aldersgate where? Durham. I said, you're kidding me. This isn't the district that you... No, but we just came. We heard you were coming. This is good. I said, well, wait till you see what I'm doing here. So anyway, the cool part of it is they're sitting in the room, and as I'm talking about their church, they're like, yeah. But when we got all done, I said, okay, this is either going to crash and burn what I just did for the last couple of hours, or it's going to validate why you do this. And he said, man, you are right on. It's amazing how much you know when you don't know us. And so that's kind of what happens when you do this work. So this is Aldersgate United Methodist Church. And so here is question number 1. How do you do demographic reports if you don't know your mission area? How do you determine what size geography to get? Is it a radius? Do people live in perfect circles? No. Is it zip codes? Well, maybe, but maybe not. Point is, what you learn when you plot your people is the reach of your church. You with me? Yes. And so this congregation, when I drew a shape around their plot, it was 408 square miles. Wow. Now, is that their mission area? No. Maybe, maybe not. You know, some churches can do that, but that's a pretty big piece of geography. But in order to do a profile of a congregation, you've got to capture 80% or more of their people. Now, here's the thing that's most important about everything I'm about to say with plotting. If you dump your membership list in the system, that's like not worth anything. You know why. You need to know who your active people are and your donors. Why? These are people that are engaging the church significantly, and you can count on them. What active people are, you determine, but hopefully they're going to at least be here there at Christmas and Easter. Somehow we're going to see them at some point during the year. So that's what we did, 98% here of the church. And then when you turn on a feature called Heat Map, which, by the way, what we're going to be seeing today is a new mapping interface that will be launched this fall, probably in October, maybe November. So you'll all be seeing that. I thought it made no sense for me to not share with you the newest technology coming down the pike. So you're going to see things that aren't currently completely available. Almost everything you're seeing works. It's just a little different. It's enhanced. So you'll be prepared for the next round of this. When I drew a shape around 48%, you could capture 48% of this church in 12 and a half square miles. So the question is their ministry area 408 square miles or 12 and a half square miles? You with me? And so maybe there are ministry areas. Maybe there's an area there. Maybe there's an area there. You get what I'm saying? Small group ministry, opportunities to do. If you're thinking about new mission and mission alignment, you need to know what's going on up there in the north part of that quadrant where they have their people. So that's part of what the discovery process is all about. So we ran a comparative insight report for this larger geography, and you'll recognize the questions: who are we? Who is our neighbor? How do the people of our congregation look? Who are they in comparison to the community? And then, of course, the Methodists don't care about money. But if they did, this would give you the financial potential of the church. And what you're going to see here, churches have paid, I kid you not, $4,000 or $5,000 to have someone come in and give them their capability, their capacity for capital campaigns. So that's what this does. So the data sources for Mosaic, the 300 data points. I've got to keep moving because I got a lot of ground to cover in another 20, 30 minutes or so. So you just need to know that's what's powering what we're seeing. Wait a minute. That's the first mistake I've ever made, too. I wonder what happened here. Hard to believe, isn't it? So I think the batteries are going. I may have to stop and change them. So this is an illustration of the different Mosaic types, starting with Group A, Power Elite. I'm going to zoom in so you can see it in a minute. These are the wealthiest people in America, Group A, and segment number 1, wealthiest. Segment number 71, least wealthy. That's S group, economic challenges. So if you look at, I really do have a problem, I'm sorry to say. Does anybody have any questions that I may have to change batteries here, but I've got them in the bag. I'm just not wanting to take the time, so I'm going to say a little closer. Notice Power Elite. Look at the names: American Royalty, Kids in Cabernet. You know, kind of cool names. Golf cart. Look at C12, golf carts and gourmet. If you know Sarasota, Florida, the golf carts and gourmet folks live down there in droves. And so that's the kind of thing that they do. And then when you get down to the economic challenges, you've got urban survivors, tight money, tough times. You get the idea, right? So each of these has a profile. This is just starting the process, but this is called Striving Single Scene. And so it's a picture of young singles living in the Midwest and southern city centers. You learn a little bit about their career-driven, they're digitally dependent, they're foodies, they're involved in sports. They're about 26% have less than $15,000. They rent. They're 25 to 30-year-old. Now, what else can we learn about them? The communication channel preference over there on the right, you notice the numbers. What you're seeing here on the right, and 222, is how do Kyle and Brittany, up in the upper right-hand corner, you see the name Kyle and Brittany. Those aren't made-up names. Those are actually the names most prevalent in this segment. I have no clue how that is, but that's what they tell me. So measured against the number 100. And the number 100 is the norm, if you will. The first icon is a direct mail or printed material. So here's our strategy to reach a Striving Single Scene. We're going to get a 4-color brochure. We're going to mail 5,000 of them out because that's the way to reach people today. Nope. Well, if the score is 19 and the norm is 100, it would save us time and money just to throw them in the trash can before we send them out, because that's really not going to do anything. Conversely, if the church does not have a smartphone app, take a look at this smartphone 222. What does that mean? You're 2 times more likely to see Kyle and Brittany Striving Single Scene if they ever darken the door of a worship service, which they may not, but if they do, They're going to have the smartphone in their hand. Their Bible app's going to be on the smartphone. You with me? And during the sermon, the smartphone is out. And for those of us that didn't grow up in that era, it's like, hey, 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 pay attention. I'm talking. Wrong. This is their culture and what goes on in their lives. We cannot behave that way if we want to engage people.
On our response card, we had someone who sent a note to me to tell my 26-year-old to put his phone away during worship. When they asked him what he was doing, he said, I was reading the scripture when it was being read.
In the first session for mission strategists in conferences, the first one I did this morning, I was telling the story that I was at lunch and someone we were talking was saying that their church got offended when someone, a guest speaker, came up and read the scripture on a tablet. Right. Because how could you be reading God's word in a tablet? Clearly, that's not God's word. I mean, it's in a tablet, you know, so that can't be. So Kyle and Brittany better have a smartphone app. They use computers 179, smart email 238. Take a look at the little antenna there. That is streaming. So if a church had podcast, there's an opportunity for a way to communicate with someone that may not. They are journeymen in technology. There are different kinds of technology. You move from novices to apprentices to journeymen to wizards. And so what does a novice look like? Well, a novice is age 55, average. You can see a little bit about them. I don't know how they know that novices are bird watchers, but apparently I don't know. And then the apprentices, average age 48, but now you notice you went from bird watching to bicycling, so probably there's a little more activity going on here. And then you move to journeyman. Now you're snowboarding and mountain rock climbing, and this is age 43. And then you move to the wizards, which is the youngest group, and now they're boxing. So you get the idea of how these impact what's going on. So here is our study area, 408 square miles. Here's what we learned. There's 439 people plotted in 235 households. You with me? This is the church. In the study area, there are 340,000 people and 137,000 households. Everybody's still tracking. And that means the penetration rate of Aldersgate is 0.2. What does that mean? Most mainline churches are 0.0, 0.1, 0.2. If you're a mega church, you might be 1%, 1.5%. If you're Roman Catholic, in the parish area, you're 3%, 3.5%, something like that. So it's not a bad number because it says it's pretty good, actually. And then, you remember I said 71 household types in America. Guess how many are in their study area? 70. So that tells you, and so you can't do this driving around. You can't know there are 70 different household types driving around. You're going to see diversity, but you're not going to know it's this dramatic. And there are 30 different segments that this church engages. Which 30? That's important. What you see right here are the segments in rank order of their presence in the study area. You with me? Starting with striving single scene is number 1. Well, there's 14,000 striving single scenes. The church has 6 of them, which means their index score, once again 100 is the benchmark, is a 25. So striving single scene we've looked at before. One of the things that is interesting about striving single scene is you can actually see 60% have moved in the last year. So that begins to tell you what are people looking for that move in the last year? What are they looking for? What are young singles looking for that just moved? Anybody got any ideas?
New singles.
Communities, jobs, schools maybe if they have children. What I just did is what we have to do with churches. And typically speaking, it gets really quiet when you ask these kinds of questions, because we've got to get our hearts and minds into these lives or we can't engage them. Does that make sense? So this tells you a little bit about Kyle and Brittany. The number 2 is suburban attainment. They've got 11. They're not doing great there either. It's an index score of 66. Very different. 46 to 50-year-olds. You look at the income. They're homeowners, not renters. Now, even though they do have smartphones, it's not spectacular. You better have a good website. You better have a good church website that's more than a bulletin board, right? And email works, and you might even, but look at their technology. Look at what's true about these folks. They are wizards. They are connected significantly. So this is the kind of household type that if you said, we'd like you to register your attendance on an iPad, they're cool with that. That's not a big deal for them. Very different than some of the other town elders or groups we have in our churches that would say, are you kidding me? So, all right. So, aging of Aquarius. Well, aging of Aquarius is the bullseye for this church. They have 61 households in aging of Aquarius. So here's the story. Wow. This congregation is 5.5 times almost more likely to have aging of Aquarius in their pew than if they drove down the street and looked for them. You with me? Right. That's important to understand in terms of their future. And when you're talking about missional alignment, you better understand who you're serving and who it is you could serve, because you can't align things unless you understand those things and what the potential is. So, aging of Aquarius. Well, here we go. Here's aging of Aquarius. Upscale boomer age couples, the 11th wealthiest in America. They're 51 to 65. Look at their income, 125 to 150,000. Now, Gary and Donna want a bulletin. Gary and Donna want a printed newsletter. Yes? Don't be messing around with all this electronic nonsense, and I don't want screens up on the, give me the print.
That's right.
I'm making fun, but there's value here. Here's the value. The value is Gary and Donna might listen to you if you explain to them what Kyle and Brittany are like and what drives them. Because probably these are good folks. They just don't understand. And they're stressed out over being asked to do things that they are not familiar with. So if we can relieve their stress by explaining what's going on, we got a better shot at getting this done in the life of a church. Make sense to you? Okay? And they're apprentices in terms of technology. So here's the thing. I mean, look at this. Look at their education. 27% have graduate degrees. 27% have bachelor's degrees. They've lived in the community a long time. That's the kind of thing you can learn. So here's the aha moment. Look at the differences between these two lifestyle segments. You got 51 to 65-year-old, 25 to 30. You got single family homes, you got apartments or condos. 125,000, 150,000, 15,000 or less. One person, 3 persons. Homeowner, renter. These folks probably don't have any kids, and if they have any at all here, they're going to be grown. And so you've got affluence, high education, upscale, you got digitally dependent, you got foodies, you got sports bars, you have all of the, they are very different from one another in terms of how they approach things. And then look at the difference in communication. If you don't understand that, you can't do ministry effectively with them. So, financial potential estimate. Here are the households in the church, and they have 21 households in the 4th wealthiest segment of America, 180 per household, thousand, $3.7 million in just that one segment. 61 of the aging of Aquarius, look at the numbers. 119,000, look at this number. $7 million. Here's the story. 235 households, $24 million plus. Keep in mind the pastor and the associate of the church were sitting in the room in the front row. And I'm showing them all these numbers. And I said, here's what I know about this. If churches will upload their active members and their donors, okay? 8 out of 10 churches, 8 out of 10, their budget will fall between 2% and 3%. You can take it to the bank, forgive the pun there, but that's exactly what it will be. So I said, I'm guessing your budget's around $700,000 to $800,000. It could be a little higher because I think you must be a pretty active church given the fact you have 2 staff people I don't know. I said, what is your budget? If you don't mind sharing with us, where are you? He said, it's about just a little, it's about 900, 800 something, I think he told me. I said, here's the thing. For those of you that measure vitality, if you're a superintendent or you are in some conference role, vital churches are going to be at that 5% number. And I've met a few of them. I've met fewer 7%ers, but there are some out there, and every single time they are active and engaging the community. They're serious about mission. I've never once in about 8 years of doing this particular report heard anybody say they were a 10% church. Most churches, frankly, it doesn't matter what denomination. Roman Catholic, Baptist, Presbyterian, doesn't matter. This seems to be the same way. So, what would happen if they did a 1% increase? 1% increase in their budget is a quarter, almost $250,000. How would you do that? How would you do a 1% increase? Well, what if this church said, we're really missing the singles. And we really don't have the capacity for it. We don't have the website for it. We don't have the smartphone app for it. We don't have the staff for it. We don't really understand it, but we think probably something has to happen off campus. We don't know. But clearly we got a staff for it, is what I said earlier. What if we began to paint the story of the life of striving single scene? What if we did that? And we talked about Kyle and Brittany, and we told their story, and we showed the pictures. And here's the other resource that's a part of the Mosaic segments, the Mission Impact Guide. This goes a step further, and it talks about how we can engage Kyle and Brittany from a ministry filter perspective. And this is a live link on every demographic report that you download from us, with the exception of the religious reports. That's different. So it looks like this, and I don't have time to go over a lot of it, but listen to these snippets about striving single scene. They're more likely to spend Christmas and Easter in a new Caribbean destination than in a church. Right? They lead entertainment-intensive lives. Smorgasbord of culture. If they do connect with a church, it may be liberal, it'll be strong on social action, avoid evangelization, cutting edge in technology, however they do it. Big, bold vision to make the world a better place. Let me say that again. Big, bold vision to make the world a better place. The millennial generation, the younger generations, and frankly, me. And I'm not that age, surprisingly. I want my life to count for something. I will be involved in something that changes lives. And these younger people don't care what we say. It's like the sermon this morning. They care what we do. And so that's part of what we've got to get happening if we're going to begin to connect with this. Anyway. Yeah, I don't have time. So there are 9 different ministry filters, like leadership preferences. So CEO, visionary, mentor, obviously pastors who cast a large, inclusive, bold vision. I'm not going to go through all this. I want to just simply show you that you should be reading these pieces of information for each of the lifestyle segments. You will not know what it means when they say organic leaders. So there's definitions for each of these categories that are a part of each of the reports that you generate, each of the mission impact reports for each segment will have all of these definitions, okay? So I want to quickly talk about generating demographic reports. So if you don't know, we have 3 predefined reports, quick insight, executive insight, full insight. My goodness, I have 15 minutes, so I just need to say this. I need to say this. If you want to scare people in your church, here's what you do. Download a full insight report and plop that 30-pager on the committee, and they'll run screaming into the night, and that'll be the end of that. I would recommend you start with a quick insight report. Why? It's 11 pages. It's a quick look. It's designed to get people's interest piqued. It's not the end all. The executive insight, I believe, is our best report overall because it's built around 12 insights. So I'm going to simply say that you might start with quick insight and move on. Ministry insight and religious insight are underutilized. No doubt they are underutilized. How many of you in the room have ever downloaded a ministry insight and a religious insight? 1, 2, 3, 4, I'm surprised. 5, 6. Yeah, good. All right. They're about ministry insight, life concerns, reasons people don't participate, program and ministry preferences, social media information and religious insight, beliefs about God and Jesus, and faith and religious involvement. So we're looking at, I got to move faster, but here's what I'm doing. This congregation has to decide. It has to decide big ministry area, small ministry area. You with me? Got to make a decision. Now, it may have multiple, but what is their primary focus? These are the mosaic segments in each of these areas. So here's what we did. We looked at all the mosaic segments, and striving single seam was present only in the bigger area. They had 6 of them. Suburban attainment, 11, only in the larger area, and there was 11 of them. There were 3, urban ambition, only in the larger geography. But the bullseye, their aging of Aquarius, was in the larger geography and in the smaller geography at the same time. So in my way of thinking, probably because of capacity, the smaller geography where half their members are makes more sense. Now, they may choose a different path because they may say, nope, we want to do singles. We want to do singles. And if that's their ministry, they're going to have to look at this larger geography. So that's a call they have to make. We're going to look at the smaller area and look at what's unique. Now, what I'm going to be doing is picking up some of the usage of the ministry insight and religious insight information. I think this is really helpful for a church that feels discouraged and wants to see potential, not blaming anybody for where they may or may not be, but that there's really an opportunity. We're living in a world where there's all kinds of opportunity. Take a look at the number of households that are present right now in this geography, 4,848. Remember that number. If we don't pay attention, this is from, by the way, the Executive Insight Report, if we don't pay attention to the generational information in every ministry area, you've got to pay attention to generations. Why? Because they're the largest population now. The younger generations, look at the top line up there, Generation X. And then below it's the millennials. And then look at the boomer generation. All of us boomers, I'm a boomer. Boy, we're feeling really good about ourselves. Take a look at the green line. If we don't pay attention, we're going to be, you all know this, but this is graphic, and it'll help a church understand. I mean, in reality, look at the pie chart. I mean, the GI generations, 0.8%. Millennials, 26%. Gen X's are 28%. It's a no-brainer, friends. It's a no-brainer. And if you don't know, by the way, what the definitions are, there's information about generational types right here. You can click on it, and it will tell you more definitions about what this means, because some people don't know about it, all right? And then looking at income by race and ethnicity, I looked at this report and said, holy cow, look at that number for Asian. Where is this? This is the Research Triangle in North Carolina. So it's kind of like, oh, okay, I get that, right? That's not what I wanted to do. All right? Married couples, singles, well, you know, it's interesting. Even in this place, 30% are single parents. So that's kind of important to know. I want to show you quadrennium and the Religious Insight Priorities Report specifically. I've got to tell you, when we did this and I saw these results, I thought, there are multiple sermons here. So notice the number one ranking for beliefs about God. God is love and invites the world into a loving relationship, somewhat strong agreement. Look at number 2. I have a personal relationship with one living God who is Lord and Savior, weak agreement. Anybody in the room think that's problematic? I think that's problematic. So, activity in a religious congregation. But pastor, there are so many churches. We got 17 churches within 3 miles of us. So what? Seriously. That's not the question. That is a smokescreen. That is taking us away from what we're called to do and be. Yes? Transformation of the world. And here's what I know is true. In 2012, 51% of the population in this neighborhood said they had no faith involvement. Now it's 58%. So do the math with me. What does that mean? That means with 4,848 households in the study area, 2,800 households within that little 12-mile area, almost 5,000 households do not have any faith involvement anywhere, regardless of how many churches there are. Now, see, I don't find that, I don't see that completely negative. I see that pretty darn exciting, frankly. I'm ready to go. Let's go to work. Amen? Can I get you all? We say amen in the Methodist Church, right? What about, and this one just blows my mind. So if you are a key leader in your district, if you're a district superintendent and you're meeting with churches and you're talking about opportunity, we ask the question, what about denominational affiliations? How many people say they're affiliated with the United Methodist Church? Affiliated. And in this study area, it was 13.9%. So there's 673 households who say they're United Methodists. What if we just got those folks? Not a very big geography. Ministry Insight and Ministry Insight priorities. What do we do with all this information? I don't have time to unplug it and unpack it. I don't understand this, friends, but this is a serious problem in the church. When we talk about financing the future, savings, and retirement, number one concern. Number two, losing weight and diet issues. And I say, okay, council, you're the church council. What could we do? It's like the RCA, you don't remember this, some of you are too young, the RCA dog going. What do we do? Why can't our congregations get into the hearts and minds of people who are saying, finance the future? What would we do? What could we do? Financial Peace University, get a CPA from your church to talk about investments. Do something. Do something. And if it doesn't work, do something else. And what about losing weight? Do some kind of a fresh expression around physical fitness. I don't know, but do something. People outside the church, why they don't come. Religious people too judgmental. Number one. Religion too focused on money. Number two. How do you raise money? You don't talk about money. You don't talk about money. You talk about ministry. You talk about giving to God what is actually His and tell them why. Not just because the Bible says we should do, but because God will do great things with this. And here are some of the things we see God can do. And you paint the picture. If I had time, I'd tell you some stories of things I've done in ministry that was not, I'm not so smart. But telling the story, a compelling story about how God can act, changes the finances when churches say they can't. I was at a church, I was at First Methodist, Jacksonville, Florida. They hadn't raised a budget in 20 years. They hadn't paid conference claims in 10 years. We raised the budget 20% the first year. Why? Because there was clear vision, mission. We were clear what we were doing, who we were, and why we were there. Enough of that. These are people inside the church who are thinking of leaving. Religious people too judgmental. Same thing. Religion too focused on money. Same thing. But look at this one. Don't believe in God. What is happening, friends, when people in the church say they don't believe in God? What's going on? What is going on? I mean, we look at ourselves. There's nobody else to look at. What's going on? We're not making this up. This is what people said. Finally, if you don't hear anything I said in this entire time, every time I go anywhere today, I say this. And people are tired of hearing it, but I don't care. I'm going to say it anyway. When we did this national survey, and there were more than 30 options for people to say, what ministries are we interested in? By a mile, so far ahead of any other choice, it's unbelievable. 5.3 ratio responses to 2.6. Warm and friendly encounters, number one. Warm and friendly encounters. Number two was sermons, social listen, look at this. Warm and friendly encounters. Number three, social activities. Number six, activities. Number four, opportunities for volunteering. Family-oriented activities. What are you hearing? It doesn't matter how good your worship is. It's important. Doesn't matter how great a preacher you are. If there are not ways to get in, if you cannot build relationships for newcomers, guests, if they can't have their own experiences with others, I don't care how good you are, they're not staying. They're going to find a place where that occurs. Doesn't matter what brand is on the door. Do you all know what I'm talking about? And in my little church, I was a part of a church plant, 0 to 400 in about 5 years. And my wife and I have gone to a church in the inner city with 110 on Sunday morning, landlocked in a neighborhood that has 400 families with children that can walk to the building in 20 minutes. And they have about 6. And the average age is 60, 65. You know the story. You got them in your conferences, right? This is nothing new. But we've got small groups. We got groups. We got the United Methodist Women. We got the Seekers class. Doesn't work. Not that they're not nice people. It's not about being nice people. They're closed groups. Period. People don't want to hear that. They're closed. You're nice. You're friendly. But you've got history. And I sit in a group that was formed called, what was it called? We started it, oh gosh, something, Fresh Connections or something, I don't know. I can't remember now. Can't remember the name. And the group was formed to be a conduit for people that walked in so they'd have a place to go. New people, mostly new people. And we got people that have joined that class that when you ask them about their life in the church, they say, I've been in this church 26 years. And the minute they say that, a guest in the room is disconnected. Not because they're bad people, but because that's the reality of things. I want to show you, I'm out of time. Oh golly, I've got to show you this. I think travel polygons are one of the most important things we do. So I've got to show you this. What's a travel polygon? Travel polygon is a way to do walk time, drive time, and this is the new system. And basically you can do a 15, 20-minute walk time from your location. You basically go to shapes and you select travel polygon and you say, I have the street address of the church, or I can select the point on the map. I clicked on Aldersgate, it selected that. You click next after that, and then the system asks you, all right, what would you like in terms of your walk time? 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and click next. And then once you click, boy, I don't know what I did. Once you click next, then it says, okay, we're going to draw a polygon. And what kind of detail do I want? Low detail, medium detail, or high detail? I want medium detail. And so here it is. We're all ready to go. We click draw. And now we have 3 different polygons that are 5-minute, 10-minute, and 15-minute walk. And you can select any of them for demographic information. So I selected the 15-minute walk from the church building. And I ran a report, and I found out there are 138 families with children. 138, and they didn't think there were any because it's kind of a, it's the research triangle. There's not much housing right around where their building is. They were a little surprised to see this number. So you can do wonderful maps to tell stories, custom boundaries like districts. Here are all the elementary schools in an area. You can zoom in and look at them in detail. You can do demographic analysis on them. Theme maps provide the opportunity for you to literally create a map at whatever color you want. You can change the color themes now. You can change the way it appears. So you simply change the color and you get different colors. I know I'm moving rapidly. So here's the thing. I want to show you opportunity scan as the last thing. Here's this same geography, the larger one, and I want to ask a question demographically. I want to know what the population in this area is like by zip codes for 2019. When I scan the area, and I can change the color, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to leave it alone. Scan the area. Basically what it will do is it will create a map, and I can then go in. Here are the populations for each zip code. I can click the boxes, and actually what I can do is sort the population for growing areas by clicking the header. And then I can click the top 5 areas, and I can mark the map with the top 5 zip codes that are growing in the next 5 years. So anyway, I'm going to stop because of time, and there may be questions. I realize I had too much material to go online a lot. What kind of questions do you have? Has it prompted thinking? Yes, sir.
Are there assumptions made when you enter the data of your congregation, the donors and the people that regularly attend? Are there assumptions made by the product that base those dollar amounts? So is that basically on the demographics of the area, not?
Oh, no. They're assigned a Mosaic household. Experian has Mosaic household segments assigned to zip +4s. So 3 to 4 households on a street will be assigned a Mosaic code.
We do that?
No, we do that. Experian does that, and we code them. That's how we know that you're Platinum Prosperity, and I'm Struggling Societies or whatever it is, kind of thing. That's how we know. That's how it's done. Yeah. Other questions? Yes.
So when you plug in all your people
Yep.
and their addresses,
Yep.
you guys estimate how much the income could be? It's an estimate.
No, it is the household medium income of that segment.
Okay.
Now, is it so let's play a scenario out. Zip +4, 3 households on a street, 3 or 4 together. I live on a street where my income, I choose to live there. My income is maybe a little higher perhaps than some around me, but it's not 100,000 higher, right? And if you are a Platinum Prosperity A02, you're not living next to S69 that's in poverty. So even if the number is slightly off, typically, I mean, there's always anomalies, but we've been doing this for a long time, and it's precisely how Walmart puts stuff on the shelf. They know exactly who lives in their community, and they put stuff on the shelf based on the households.
That's why I asked for your zip code.
Yep.
And then when you get that particular number, the most budgets are about 2% of that?
2 to 3%.
2 to 3, okay.
Yeah, typically. Yeah, I mean, if your church is a lot more than that, now my little church, honestly, they're pretty strong in their budget. They're given a lot of money by comparison, but they're good people, and they're missionally minded, but they're just kind of not engaging people not like them. And that's a hard thing. Very hard thing. Yes, sir.
And that number tracks very closely with what stewardship and investment companies not using the demographics
Yeah.
talk about from church statistics.
Yeah.
That 2.5% is.
Yeah. That's not a strange number, as you say. That's pretty much what we know about denominational giving. It's just proven out here on our system because we know what the numbers are. So the thing about this is you can learn a lot of, if you think about raising money in your church, this will tell you what you can do. And if you're $50,000 off or 75, you don't have to tell them that way, but you certainly know what the potential is. And I will tell you, money follows mission. Period. Money follows mission. If you are not clear with your mission, you can't raise your budget. They don't care about salaries, lights. They may say they do, but in the end, they're not opening their wallet bigger unless they believe somebody's life is going to change. And maybe it's grandparents and grandchildren. I mean, in older congregations, things like that are true. So, any other questions? I appreciate your time. Yes, sir.
Just one question on the process here. That ministry insight and religious insight came off of the executive report?
No, it came from our national survey called Quadrennium. It's been done twice. The first one is 2012, and the second one was 2017. We didn't do it in 16 because of what? The election. So we thought it was smart to do it in January of 17, not 16.
But to access that on the MissionInsite.
Oh, it's one of the predefined reports. So when you select a geography, you'll have predefined reports. There'll be 3 demographic reports and 4 of these quadrennium faith-based religious surveys. So what we've done is we've done the 30-page Ministry Insight report and a summary of it for people who don't want to read 30 pages. So there's Ministry Insight and Ministry Insight priorities. There's Religious Insight and Religious Insight priorities, because we like the Reader's Digest version, for those of you that remember Reader's Digest. Boy, am I dating myself, right? But that's what it is. Yeah, right, yeah. Well, thanks, everybody. Listen, I'll be around. I don't do another one for 30 minutes, an hour, I mean. I've got some cards. Be happy to talk with any of you, or if there's some coaching you need, we'll help you. We'll do what we can to help you. We do relate to a lot of churches, but we take phone calls, and we've got chat, and we could do a webinar if we need to. Okay? All right. Hope it was helpful.
Yes,
Thanks.